In a ravaged world, a woman and her lover are chased after a cult that wants to use them as sacrifices for the demonic creatures that lurk in the woods. Years after the Rapture, a group of survivors have viewed the ability to speak as a sin. Among them is Azrael, who gathers berries in the woods and adds the fruits to a bracelet she's making. Suddenly, she hears a movement nearby, but when she sees nothing amiss, she returns to her camp, only to find that her boyfriend, Keenan, has created fire to keep warm. Azrael hurries and puts the flames out since someone might see them. After ensuring that no one has found them, the woman pushes Keenan in anger for risking them. They soon continue further into the woods, but Azrael marches ahead, still pissed. Keenan whistles to get her attention, and a frightened Azrael shushes him since someone might hear him. Overwhelmed with fear and fatigue from hiding, the woman breaks down. Her boyfriend then rushes to comfort her, which leads them to a kiss. Azrael then gives Keenan the bracelet she made, but their tender moment is interrupted when they hear whistles from afar. Afraid that they've been found, the two hide behind a tree. However, they hear the others nearing them, so Keenan gestures for Azrael to run while he diverts them away. Azrael tries to stop him, but the man insists. He quietly runs to the other side and whistles when he gets far to direct the others to him. Azrael uses this chance to run in the other direction, but she ends up being spotted by Anton. Anton chases down the woman and leads her to be captured by Luther. The men then drag Azrael, who sees that Keenan has also been captured by Isaac and Liesel. The couple try to fight their captors, but with Liesel holding a knife to Keenan's throat, they both surrender as they're thrown into separate cars. While trapped in the trunk of the car, Azrael tries to escape while keeping watch of the other car where Keenan is. To her horror, the other car turns to another road, leaving her with no clue where he'll be. Eventually, her captors drag her to where their leader waits. Luther, Anton, and Severin then bind her to a chair before Josephine faces the woman. As punishment for deflecting, Josephine wounds Azrael's legs. Her blood attracts something from the woods, and the others head to higher ground to let Azrael be sacrificed to the monsters. Azrael desperately struggles through her binds while the others breathe heavily, as if to pray while waiting for the sacrifice. Soon, Azrael sees humanoid creatures lurking nearby, so she pulls on her binds stronger. One of the dark creatures screeches as it closes in, but Azrael soon starts breaking one of the armrests, which Anton notices. With the others distracted in their prayer, Anton goes to stop Azrael from escaping. However, during their struggle, the woman accidentally stabs him with the broken wood tied to her arm. As Anton bleeds, he walks into the woods where one of the humanoid creatures called the Burned Ones captures him and feeds on his blood. Azrael watches this in horror while she fights to get her other arm free. Finally, she escapes and runs. Only then do the others look back and see Anton's body being dragged away. Azrael eventually reaches some ruins by the river where she rests. She considers crossing the river to gain distance away from her enemies, but realizes that Keenan is still in danger, so she turns back. With that, she gathers medicinal leaves to patch up her wound, only to find that a burned one has smelled her blood. It limps towards her, and Azrael quietly hides within the ruins. However, the creature follows her blood scent, so Azrael covers her wound, hoping to hide the smell. Thankfully, this works, and the creature leaves. Walking back to the woods, Azrael eventually finds fresh tire tracks. She figures that this is from the car that took Keenan, so she follows it. This leads her to the enemy's camp. Quietly, Azrael creates a hole in their fence for her to crawl into. She then searches the camp for Keenan, though she accidentally knocks something over, alerting the watchman, Leon. Seeing no other movement, Leon dismisses the sound, allowing Azrael to cross to the other side of the camp. This leads her to spot the bracelet she'd given Keenan on the ground, confirming that he was there. Josephine and Severin soon arrive at camp, so Azrael moves to hide. Josephine checks on her sickly mother in their tent before heading to the camp's church where the rest of the villagers are. A mass is held, led by their pregnant priestess Miriam. The woman listens to the wind blowing from a hole in the chapel, believing that this is how God speaks to them. Miriam then blows a candle to alert everyone that their mass is over. The villagers begin to leave, but Josephine stays to face Miriam. Without words, Miriam understands that Josephine failed in sacrificing Azrael, so she slaps the woman. Just then, they hear movement from outside, but when Miriam checks, no one's around. Azrael is actually under the church, watching as Josephine exits the place. She waits as the woman circles around the church, but Josephine soon goes out of her sight. To her shock, Josephine suddenly crawls towards her. The woman manages to pin her down and strangle her, but Azrael kicks her off and knocks her out. She crawls out of the church, but finds that the camp is now full of people. Desperately, Azrael dodges the villagers, but Josephine recovers and rings a bell, alerting everyone about the intruder. With no choice, Azrael goes to the fence to escape, but Isaac spots her and runs. The woman fights through the barbed fence, wounding her hands in the process. Thankfully, she manages to climb out and kick off Isaac when he grabs her leg. As she runs, Leon shoots at her but misses, allowing her to disappear into the woods. Azrael keeps running until dark, leaving her exhausted. She leans on a rock to rest momentarily, not noticing that her blood is smeared on the surface when she leaves. The scent immediately attracts a burned one, and Azrael spots it licking her blood from the rock. It then smells the blood from her hand, so Azrael backs off, only to find another creature nearby. She runs with the two monsters chasing her until she reaches another road where a truck hits her. The driver, Demian, checks on the woman, and to her surprise, he speaks to her, though in a foreign language. Despite this confirming that he's not part of Josephine's village, Azrael remains wary of the man. However, she hears the burned ones from afar, so she has no choice but to get into his truck, hurrying him to drive off. Demian is confused since she won't speak, but he drives off with her anyway. During the ride, Demian offers her a towel for her bleeding hand. He tries talking to her again, but Azrael shakes her head to let him know that she can't speak. She then shows him the scar on her neck, revealing that her vocal cords had been removed. This makes her companion worried. He then turns the car radio on, allowing Azrael to listen to a song for the first time. The woman is confused by this at first, but she starts enjoying the music. Just then, a bullet is shot straight into Demian's head as Severin has found them. Demian's body presses down on the truck's pedal, causing them to speed uncontrollably and run over Severin. Azrael tries controlling the wheel but sees a ruined building up ahead. She shields herself just before the truck crashes. Azrael soon climbs out of the truck and sees an injured Severin positioning his rifle to shoot her. Instead, Azrael tackles him and tries to strangle him with his weapon. The battle sends the two tumbling down the slope. Severin manages to retrieve his gun and fires at Azrael, but it jams. Instead, he slams it on her to keep her from escaping. However, Azrael grabs a rock and hits him over the head with it. This causes Severin to be disoriented long enough for Azrael to take his rifle. She loads it, but the man suddenly jumps at her and puts her in a chokehold. Still, Azrael uses her legs to bring the rifle close. She aims it at Severin's temple, just at the side of her own head, and pulls the trigger, killing him and deafening herself momentarily. After recovering from the fight, Azrael begins walking through the woods again. Eventually, she sees someone by a campfire. The woman aims the rifle at him, only to recognize that it's a wounded Keenan. Without thinking, Azrael rushes to him but gets caught in a trap that leaves her dangling upside down from a tree. From there, she finally sees that Keenan's hand is nailed to the same tree, keeping him in place. Luther arrives, having devised the trap to capture the woman. He takes the rifle she got from Severin and uses it to knock out Keenan. Soon, their wounds attract the burned ones. Luther searches the darkness for the creatures while Azrael desperately tries to free herself from the rope. However, this leads to her opening the gash on her hand. With blood pouring from her hand, she realizes that Luther is gone. Suddenly, a burned one appears, having captured Luther. It slams him on the tree trunk before licking his blood from the wood. Luther tries to escape, but more creatures arrive and tear at his flesh. All the while, Azrael fights to climb up the rope and eventually manages to hoist herself over a branch. She then watches as Luther is outnumbered and fed on. Keenan wakes up to witness the horror, and Azrael is shocked to see that he's still alive. The man stays quiet to avoid being detected as the burned ones finally take Luther's corpse to the woods. Thinking that it's safe, Azrael starts going to him, but a burned one finds him and starts feeding on him. Azrael tries climbing down to save him, but another monster catches her scent and starts climbing the tree. With no choice, she pulls herself higher up the tree, watching in horror as Keenan is dragged away. The burned one chasing her gets near, and the rope on Azrael's leg catches on another branch. She hurriedly unties her leg, but the monster manages to grab her before she can move again. It pins her down, so Azrael ties the rope around its neck before jumping off the tree, taking it down with her. This leads to the creature being hung while she collapses on the ground. Exhausted, Azrael climbs back to her feet, barely having time to grieve Keenan's death. Instead, she picks up Severin's rifle and decides to exact revenge on her enemies instead. She heads back to the campsite and hides behind a tree before whistling. Thinking that she's one of their comrades, Isaac whistles back. However, When they can't find her, Isaac motions for the others to search the woods with him. This allows her to sneak back inside undetected. She goes to the church where she finds Miriam at the altar. Knowing that she was directing the others to hunt her down, Azrael aims a gun at the priestess, but pauses when she sees her pregnant belly. Miriam uses her moment of hesitation to swat her gun and hit her with a pan. As she collapses, Azrael accidentally scratches Miriam's belly. Azrael is soon dragged out of the camp and back into the woods where they've dug a grave. The others heave their breaths, praying to summon the burned ones while Isaac smears Azrael's blood on her face. They then drop Azrael into the wooden coffin and seal her inside. Azrael bangs on the lid as the villagers shovel dirt over her casket. Then, from above, they pull one side of the coffin, revealing that it's connected to an underground tunnel. With no choice, Azrael crawls into the tunnel in hopes of escaping. As she does, however, she hears movement from the darkness. The woman presses on until she sees light, but a burned one emerges from the darkness just ahead. It heads towards her and Azrael crawls away as fast as she can. However, she ends up back in the casket while the burned one blocks the only exit. Scared, the woman freezes as the creature climbs over her, smelling the blood on her face. As a final act of defiance, Azrael makes a soundless scream at its face. Just then, the creature takes her hand and smells it. Azrael recalls that she accidentally scratched Miriam's belly when she collapsed, and the scent of the other woman's blood distracts the monster. To her surprise, the burned one backs away, leaving her unharmed. Despite the confusion, Azrael uses this chance to escape. Josephine's group soon returns to their camp. While Isaac and Liesel, who turn out to be lovers, part ways to their separate tents, Josephine checks on her sickly mother. Unbeknownst to them, Azrael has climbed out of the hole they left her in. At the church, Miriam cleans her scratch when Josephine arrives to help. Not long after, they hear something from the camp, so Josephine runs out and finds her tent burning. Josephine desperately tries to get to her mother, but Isaac pulls her to safety. The others throw water over the flames in a futile effort to quell it, but the fire soon starts spreading to the nearby tents. Suddenly, Leon is shot, so Liesel takes cover. They spot that Azrael has returned, so Liesel grabs her rifle and returns fire. However, the spreading flames distract the woman, allowing Azrael to get a clean shot at her. Liesel collapses, and Isaac tries to tend to her. Meanwhile, a shell-shocked Josephine finally snaps out of it and moves to hide, but Azrael shoots her as well. While some of the villagers run to the woods, Isaac mourns as Liesel dies in his arms. He then sets her down and grabs a gun to avenge her. This begins a shootout between him and Azrael. When the gunfire subsides, the man hides behind trees and tents, searching for the woman. He hears her whistle around camp, so he follows the sound but still can't find her. This eventually frustrates the man. So when he spots movement amidst the flames, Isaac immediately shoots, only to realize that he just shot someone else. As he looks at his victim, Azrael appears from behind and slices his head off. Machete in hand, Azrael crosses the fiery camp, passing by Josephine's body along the way. She marches up to the church, but Miriam ambushes her from behind with a cleaver. Azrael deflects the attack but loses her weapon, forcing her to crawl under the pews to avoid the woman. Miriam catches up and grabs the woman. As they wrestle for her weapon, Miriam attempts to push Azrael's head towards her blade, but the woman kicks her ankle, freeing herself. Miriam brings down the cleaver towards her again, but Azrael dodges and the blade gets stuck on another pew. With this, Azrael pushes the woman to the wall and bites her neck. The pain and stress causes Miriam's water to break, much to their surprise. She stumbles her way to the altar while Josephine, who survived, shoots at their enemy. Azrael dodges her bullet and hides behind the pews. However, Josephine gets distracted when she sees Miriam giving birth. This allows Azrael to slam her to the ground. Josephine grabs a broken wood and slams it on Azrael's back, but she counters by sending a chair leg against her knees. Josephine then reveals a switchblade and attacks her enemy with it, but Azrael deflects and swats the knife from her hand. She then smashes her face against a pew, then throws her aside. Finally, she takes Miriam's cleaver and drives it into Josephine's shoulder. The woman removes the blade from her body, but this just causes her to bleed out faster. Josephine hears the cries of Miriam's baby just before she collapses to the ground with a smile. The cries then start sounding like bleeding, and Azrael sees Miriam back away from her own child. Horrified by what came out of her, Miriam uses a knife to end her own life. The wind then picks up around them, signaling the arrival of the burned ones. They cross the burning tents towards the church while Azrael checks on the baby. The burned ones arrive at the church while Azrael takes the newborn, which has a goat-like head. The burned ones then screech to welcome the birth of the Antichrist, and Azrael smiles.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.